This is Gemara Baba Basra, Daf Mem Aleph. And we're holding on Mem Aleph and Aleph at a new Mishnah. And as much as we are knee deep in Cheskes Abatim, the Mishnah begins with a fundamental din into Chazaka. The truth is, a din that was mentioned all the way back on Daf Chav Ches, which was at the very beginning of this parak, but this is its makayim. This is the din of the Mishnah of the creation of the chazaka and the integral ingredient that the chazaka needs a taina. Just by living in someone else's field and never claiming to have bought, never claiming to have any rights to the field, is not going to do anything. Says the Mishnah, Kol chazaka sheni my taina. Eina chazaka ketzad. How is this? Amar la, if the previous owner said, Ma'atosa b'toch sheli, what are you doing in my house? And he says, la, and he says to him, Shloi amar li adam davar me'elam. You know I am here because no one ever said anything to me. Chazaka. That's not a chazaka. But if he says, Shemachartali, you sold it to me, Shenesatali, you gave it to me b'matan as a gift, Avicha machartali, your father sold it to me, Avicha nasli b'matan, your father gave it to me as a gift, then harezu chazaka. V'hacha, and concludes the Mishnah, v'haba, misham yerusha, in sarach taina. But if someone inherits the land, then he does not need to have a taina, because he doesn't necessarily know how his father got rights to his field, etc. Says the Gemara, Pshita, of course, the Mishnah, meaning, you need a taina. Obviously, what's the chiddush? Explains the Gemara, you know what the chiddush is. I would have thought, Hi Gavra Mizvan Zavna Le. I would have thought that the person in the field did buy the field. Hayara. Ushtara Havaleni has the shtar virchas. And he lost the shtar. So why is he saying lahadam? Why is he saying no one ever said anything to me? If he bought it, why doesn't he just say he bought it? Savar, he thinks, if I say that I bought it, Amruli is going to tell me, show me your shtar. Hilkach. So he thinks, therefore, maybe, I'll say, Dilma Ilkach Leimale Anan. So therefore, the Bezdin should say to him, Dilma Shtara Havalach Verchas. Maybe you had a shtar and you lost it. It's a classic example of Psachvicha. We help the Elaim who open the mute open his mouth. That's what you would think. Meaning you would think that maybe there is a good chazaka, even though he said no one ever said anything to me. And really he did buy it. He's just nervous to say that. So Bezdin should be the one to facilitate that. Kamash Malon, the Mishnah, no. This is not a case of Psach Michal Elam. This is not a case that Bezdin will introduce to Taina, but rather call chazaka sheini my Taina. Eina chazaka, the person on his own has to be the one to introduce such a claim. Continues the Gemara, Ravanan, a story. Shakal bidka ba'ara. Ravanan had a flood that slept through his field. There was no more any boundary markers. So Azal, Ravanan went, Hadar Guda, ba'ara de Chavre, and he put up a fence inside his neighbor's field. Meaning, when Rav Anan rebuilt the field, he didn't exactly know where the property's lines were. And therefore, when he put up the fence, what happened? Not necessarily, no, not on purpose at all, but he put up a field partially on his neighbor's property. Also, Rav Nachman. So Rav Anan came in front of Rav Nachman as the neighbor was upset and asked him to move his field. Rav Nachman said, go and give back the field to your friend. Asked the Gemara, 1 second. Said Rav Anan, but I created a chazaka. Why did I create a chazaka? Because he saw me building the fence and he wasn't meicha. He didn't protest. So asks Rav Anan, what's the reason why you're telling me I have to move my fence? He saw me build a fence and he left it. clearly indicating I'm right. Now he's coming with a taina. Mecha tesi, I have my fence. Amar le, so Rav Nachman responds, Kiman, according to whom do you say that you have a chazaka by building the fence? Rav Yehuda Rav Yishmael. Damri, they hold 8 lines on the bottom. Kol befanav la'alta have a chazaka. A chedish, that you don't need 3 years. If you do something befanav, in front of the owner, if he saw me build the fence, if he was there, then the altar. Right away, it's a chazaka. You don't need the requisite 3 years. So that's who you, Rav Anan, want to say you have a chazaka based on the sheet of Rav Yehuda and Rav Yishmael. Says Rav Kahana, less hilchasa kavasayu, we do not paskin like them. Amar Le, continues Rav Anan, va'achel, but he was Michael. Why? Not only did he see me build the fence and not say anything, he helped me build the fence. So if he helped me build the fence, why isn't that clear proof that he was Michael? Amar Le, says Rav Nachman. Excuse me, I think he said Rav Kahana. Rav Nachman. Nachman is one responding. Said Rav Nachman to Rav Anan, Mechila be'taos. It was a tayis. He didn't mean it. At gufach, you yourself, ihave yadis, if you would have known, lo yavdita, you would not have put the fence there. Ki hechi da'at lave yadis, honami lave yadeh, and therefore it was all one big tayis, and therefore Paskins, Rav Nachman, to Rav Anan, you got to return his land, you got to move the fence back to where it belongs. Continues the Gemara of Kahana, a similar story. Shadak Shokal Pitka Ba'are, Rav Kahana had a flood that swept through his field. Azal Hadar Guda Ba'ara Deloidide. He went and he put up a fence, and the fence overstepped its boundaries into a field that was not his. As we turn over to Memalafam Beis, and this time it is indeed Rav Kahana. Also lekamei Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana comes in front of Rav Yehuda. Azalaisi Tresadi. So he comes in front of Rav Yehuda and he brings 2 witnesses. Chadamar Tarte Utziate Al. He brings 2 witnesses. And one of them said that Kahana had gone over 2 rows of his neighbor's field. Tarte Utsi Asa Al. He went over 2 rows of his neighbor's field. V'chadamar, and one of the Eidim said, Tlas Asiyote Al, 3 rows. So the shaila here is, how far into the neighbor's field did Rav Kahana err and put up his fence incorrectly? So Amar Lei, so Rav Yehuda said, Zil Shlim Tarti, Migai Tlas, you have to go give back 2 rows out of 3. So Amar Lei, Rav Kahana said, Kiman, whom are you pasking like when you're telling me I have to give back 2 rows? Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Titania, we learned in a brayso from Shimon ben Elazar, Lenechluchu, Beishamai Beis Hillel al Shnei Kitei Eidim. Beishamai and Beis Hillel did not disagree with regard to 2 sets of Eidim that what? Sha'achas oimeres mana v'achas omeres motayim. Sheyesh b'chlam asayim mana. Everyone agrees that at least they're both being made on 100. Aman echliku, what's the machlekes? She'echad amer mana v'echad amer masayim. Within one group, that 1 says 100 and 1 says 200. In that scenario, we split the edus in half, and there's no edus at all, because you don't have 2 edim saying anything. Beis Hillel says no. Beis Hillel, there still is 200 within 100. So according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, the machlokes is only within 2 groups of Eidim, but when it's within 1 group of Eidim, then Beis Hillel will allow the Eidos to combine, not to Beis Shammai. So says Rav Kahana to Rav Yehuda, who are you passing me like? Rav Yehuda says, Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Because according to Rav Shimon Elazar, Beis Hillel holds within one group, the two Eidim will combine. So too over here, we have one group, and each aid is saying, one is saying two, one is saying three. So both saying at least two rows. So Amar Le, Rav Kahana says to Rav Yehuda, 15 lines down, the first one in line is Maisina, Maisina lach igira me ma'arava. But I'll bring you a letter from Eretz Yisrael. The Ein Alachik Rav Shimon Elazar. Rav Kahana said, I'm sorry, we don't paskin like Rav Shimon Elazar. Amar Le, Rav Yehuda says, Beseder l'chitesi. When you bring it, then maybe I'll go back. But right now, paskin Rav Yehuda, there are two Eidim. Each one is agreeing you owe at least two rows. And that is what Lamaisa, you have to pay back your neighbor. Ahu Gavra continues the Gemara with story number 3 of the day. Again, we had two flooded fields with overstepped fence boundaries. The second, the latter being Rav Kahana, the first being Rav Anan. Now we have a third story. Ahu Gavra, there was someone, Didar Bikishta Ba'aliyasa Arba Shani, who lived in the Aliyasa, the upper floor in a house in a place called Kashta for Arba Shni for 4 years. Also, Mara de Beise, the Ashkechem, one day, the owner of the house, hey, look who's sitting in my house. Amarlai, my body's my base. So what in the world are you doing in this house? So Amarlai, the person living there said, Miplani is avinte, tizavna minach. I bought it from Pliny, from someone who bought it from you. Asli came to Rav Chia, they came from Rav Chia for a din ta'ira. Amar Le, Rav Chia said to the person that was living in the field, I eslachasati de darba, iu zivante de darba iu. If you have witnesses, the darba iu de zivante mine, that the one that you bought it from lived in this field, afilu chad yoima. If he even lived there for one day, then we'll say it's yours, because you'll have a proof that he was there for a day. You have a chazaka of 4 years, at least 3 years that you live there now. Therefore, you would win. But if you don't have such a proof, then I cannot give you the property. That was the psak halacha of Rav Chia. Amar Rav, said Rav, Havi Yasimna Kamei de Chavivi. I was sitting in front of Chavivi, my uncle Rav Chia, Va'amri lei, and they said to him, do people not buy and sell in one night without ever living there? So why does the original owner, why do we need to have Eidim that the original owner necessarily lived there? Maybe the original owner bought it and flipped it immediately. V'chazita l'daite, l'maisa Rav Chia was not maskim, and now Rav explains that even though Rav Chia required eidos, that the first guy lived there for a day, I thought that Rav Chia held that if the one who lived there said to the owner, I bought it from him when you were here, mehem, and he would believe. Why? Because he could have said, I bought it from you. Remember, he has a chazaka. He just needs a taina. So he could have said to the owner, I bought it from you. He didn't. He said, I bought it from the different guy. So if you would have said, I bought it from him in front of you, or he bought it from you in front of me, that would have sufficed. Amar Rava, says Rava, Kavased, Rav Chia Mistavra. We're going with Rav Chia that the original owner, the buyer, had to be there at least a day. The Katani, as we learned in the Mishnah Haba, Mishum Yerusha, Ein Sarech Taina. But what's the obvious diak? Taina Udalai Ba'i. You don't need a taina, meaning because you don't necessarily know what happened. But Haraya Ba'i, but you do need to have a raya that the original person lived there. Says Gemara, Raya Ba'i below taina Ba'i. Maybe you don't need either. Answers the Gemara, Viba Yisema. Or another, meaning maybe you don't need a raya, maybe you don't need a taina. Or maybe a lokeach is different. You don't throw something else out. And therefore, that's what you need a raya according to Rav Chia. But maybe a Yerusha would not be the same, and the Gemara does not answer the shayla. What if the seller was seen in the property but wasn't actually using it? Is that enough? Rav Chia said that you need a raya that guy lived there. What if we saw him in the property? Amar Abaye, it's the same thing. Rav says, no, just because he's walking through the field. Person often walks through the field, doesn't end up buying it, so him having Aiden that he walked through the field would not suffice as Rava Machlik Zabai and Rava as to what raya would work according to Rav Chia. We'll pick it up from the bottom over here. Mirza Hashem.